Hello everyone. In the previous lectures, we studied about the concept of ecosystems and component of ecosystems. Today, I'm going to talk about the functions of ecosystem. So, as we know that ecosystem is a dynamic system which includes both biotic components and abiotic component, influencing the properties of each other, and both are necessary for maintenance of life. So we can understand the ecosystem by studying the structural and functional attributes of all its living, that is abiotic and non-living, means the abiotic components. Functionally, the biotic and abiotic components of ecosystems are so interwoven into the fabric of nature that their separation from each other is practically very difficult. We know that the ecosystem is a dynamic unit. Every ecosystem performs under natural conditions in a delicately balanced and systematic controlled manner, and the closely linked structural and functional attributes are critical for continued operations of an ecosystems, and their integrated understanding provides a complete conceptualizations of the ecosystem dynamics. An ecosystem has a function. Each component plays a specific function, while summed up the functions of all components defines the ecosystem function in a whole. So in other words, the biotic and abiotic components of an ecosystems are closely linked with one another to carry out continuous interactions, and such as the flow of energy, then transfer of food, etc. And such processes are called as an ecosystem function. So the biotic and abiotic components which carry out the in which the flow of energy takes place, transfer of food takes place, and these processes are called as the functions of ecosystem. So a functioning ecosystem exhibits biological and chemical activities characteristics for its type. For instance, a functioning forest ecosystem exhibits rates of plant productions, carbon storage, and nutrient cycling that are characteristics of most of forest. If forest is modified into an agroforest or the agro ecosystem, its functioning changes. The concept of ecosystem function is based on perspective that focuses on the whole systems and the functional roles played by each component within it. Giller et al. In 2004 characterized the ecosystem functioning by three categories of ecosystem functions, which are: first one is the ecosystem processes, second one is the ecosystem properties, and the third one is the ecosystem values. And these ecosystem values which are composed of the ecosystem goods and services. For example, ecosystem functions of an estuarine ecosystem refers to the process and the causal relations that give rise to an ecological system, the role of organisms within it, the interactions between the organisms of a different species, overall processes that sustain it, long-term dynamics of a different populations, overall biomass of the system, flow of energy and nutrients within it, and finally to the services it provides to the human beings or to the organism. So thus the ecosystem functions includes the different types of the interrelationships which occurs between the organisms and their abiotic environment. So now let's talk about the energy flow. So what is energy flow? So from the sun, the energy is trapped into the green plants, which are called as the producers. From the producers, that energy passes from the to the herbivores, to the carnivores, and thus there is a flow of energy takes place. And during that process, some energy is the energy loss takes place in the form of the heat. So the efficient functioning of an ecosystem is dependent on nutrient and the flow of energy through the food chain. The efficient functioning of an ecosystem which is dependent on the nutrients and the flow of energy through a food chain. So the food chain is defined as a sequence of a transfer of food energy from its source through series of organisms with repeated stages of eating and being eaten up. What is food chain? So food chain is defined as the sequence of a transfer of food energy from its source through the series of organisms with repeated stages of eating and being eaten. So that is called as the food chain. So the flow of energy, we know that unidirectional and non-cyclic. Energy flows from sun to primary producers to the herbivores and then to the different levels of carnivores are generally termed as the tropic levels or the tropic structure of ecosystem. So the flow of energy from one to another tropic level takes place according to the second law of thermodynamics, which states that whenever energy is transformed from one kind to another, there is an increase in entropy and decrease in the amount of useful energy. So according to the Kozlowski, which is an ecologist, the amount of energy available to a tropic level is generally 10% of the energy that previous tropic level receives. And this is also called as the 10% law, and which is given by the Lindemann. According to the Philipson, the study of process of energy transfer between the tropic level is known as bioenergetics. Thus, in an ecosystem, there is a constant flow of transfer of energy from sunlight to the plants, and through the plants to the herbivores, and from the herbivores to the carnivores in the form of food. Then, a decrease in useful energy at each successive level of nutrition due to the loss of some energy in the form of the heat. So thus energy flow is a unidirectional, non-cyclic, whereas the nutrient cycle is the cyclic movement, or the nutrient flow is the cyclic movement. Then next topic is about the energy flow model. So an energy flow model or energy flow diagram is a representation of tropic levels linked with each other, showing the inputs and losses of energy incurred during the energy transfer at each tropic level. What is an energy flow model? So an energy flow model or energy flow diagram is the representations of tropic levels linked with each other, showing the inputs and losses of energy incurred during energy transfer at each tropic level. So the energy flow models were suggested by ecologists to explain the flow of energy through different types of ecosystem. Lindemann firstly proposed upright energy flow model in 1942, assuming that plants and animals can be arranged into the tropic levels and laws of thermodynamics holds for energy transfer from one tropic level to the other. So according to him, the energy level of any step in the food chain of ecosystems equals to the rate of absorptions of energy minus the rate at which the respiration takes place, or rate at which it is lost in respiration. So according to the Lindemann, the energy flow or the energy level of any step in the food chain of an ecosystem equals to the rate of absorptions of energy minus a rate at which it is lost in a respiration. The upright flow model is always tapering near the top, since less energy is transformed from each level than odds pumped into it. Later in 1963, E.P. Odom suggested a simpler one-way flow energy model using the boxes and connections. He used the boxes to denote the biomass of steps in the food chain and the connections to depict the energy flowing between the tropic levels. So now question in mind rises that what is biomass? So biomass, it is the weight of all living organisms of any tropic level. Then additional informations regarding the channelizations of energy along two separate paths lead to the idea of Y-shaped model of energy flow, and this model suggested the flow of energy along two pathways, one moving along the line of producers, herbivores and carnivores, while the other along the line of decomposers. So let's have a look on schematic diagrams of the three type of energy flow model as we discussed here. Now let's start the next topic, that is food chain and food web. So every food chain or food web is essentially a system of energy transfer. In fact, energy transfer is a very basis of life. Food is the means of transfer of both matter and chemical energy in the living world. So as earlier I had given the definitions of food chain. What is food chain? So it is the sequence of transfer of food energy from its source through the series of organisms with repeated stages of eating and being eaten. So the energy originally derived from the sun by plants thus passes in a material form through the various trophic levels of food chain. So the best example of the food chain is grass, grasshopper, frog, snake, peacock. So these are the different trophic levels in that food chain. Then the next topic is the food web. So as the food relations are not so simple, rather they are complex, and food chains are not strictly linear. They may have branches that may link one food chain with another. So thus there is a several interlinked food chains in a community, and one animal may be linked in more than one food chain. So the various interlinked food chains in a community constitute the food web or food cycle. So in other words, the net-like trophic interrelationship is called as food web. The net-like trophic interrelationship is called as the food web. A food web includes all the feeding relationships in an ecosystem. So since several species may occur in each of the trophic levels, the organisms that feed on a common set of organisms and are fed on by another common set of organisms are referred to as tropic species, and this is given by the Bryant and Cohen in 1984. So according to the Penny in 1980, he depicted the three types of the food webs, and which are the connected nets web based on the concept who eats whom, emphasizing the feeding relationship. Then energy flow food webs, where energy flow through the food web is estimated and quantified by the flux of energy between a resource and its consumer. And the last one, that is the functional food web, and this idea is developed on the basis of impact of species on the structure of community. So this is all about the energy flow and food chain and food web. I hope all of you have get the good informations regarding that functions of ecosystem. If you have any doubts, then you can comment me in a comment box. Thank you.